Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast, where we shine a light on the overlooked, the underrated, and the downright strange comics of the 1990s. Today, we're cracking open Spectacular Spider-Man number 185, where we get a crazy little issue here that teams up Spidey not with the Avengers, not with the Fantastic Four, but with Frogman. And together they're going to square off against the ever-theatrical White Rabbit and her not-so-fearsome partner, the Walrus. We got a slapstick comedy ahead of us. We got some awkward family dinners, a surprisingly heartfelt father-son moment, all wrapped in a classic DeMatteis and Buscema all-around good issue. It's me, Jesse Starcher, and I'm here with my pal, Chris Armstrong. Chris, are you ready to hop in?
I'm ready for the weirdest issue of the year of 1991.
This is definitely, the cover does not lie. It does not lie. Things are a bit strange. I want to ask you real quick, this is Spectacular Spider-Man that we're getting into. What were your thoughts on Spectacular Spider-Man back in the 90s?
I really liked Spectacular Spider-Man. Spider-Man's not really my favorite Marvel or superhero, but he is probably the character I have the most comic books of, just because they're always trying to get top talent on that, and one of the flagship characters for Marvel. Back in the 90s, when I was first getting into comics, he had 4 series going on, 4 monthly titles. For a while, I was grabbing all of them. I was getting my comics from a convenience store by my house, and one thing they were making sure to get every month was all the Spider-Man books. Those are likely to sell at a convenience store. But yeah, Spectacular Spider-Man, I think it might have been one of the first comics I ever bought was, I think, issue 172. It's an issue with the Puma on the cover. And it's the second two-parter. And that's always stuck out as, like, in my head, I think that might be the first comic I ever bought, except for maybe some Ninja Turtles comics or something. I was kind of grabbing a lot of Spectacular Spider-Man at this time. One of the reasons this issue stood out is a lot of the storylines in this leading up to this was like about Vermin, that character, the kind of the Ratman type character. Harry Osborn had taken on the mantle of Green Goblin, and there was a lot of stuff about him and his psychological break from reality turning into the Green Goblin. It was real serious stuff. And then this comes in as basically a sitcom issue right on the heels of some of those stories. But yeah, I like Spectacular Spider-Man, and we'll get into the artists and stuff at some point. Amazing was probably my favorite title at that time. And one of the cool things about the Spider-Man titles, when they did have those 4 different books in the early 90s, they all had sort of their own continuities going on. Each title had its own supporting cast, side characters, and storylines, and they were all kind of independent of what was going on in the other books.
Right.
By the mid-90s, by the time Maximum Carnage happened, and a little bit past that, they started doing what Superman was doing at DC, where it was almost like a weekly Spider-Man comic with a different creative team each week. The story would flow issue to issue. I liked it a lot more when each title had its own storylines.
Right. As far as Spectacular Spider-Man goes, for probably the late 80s and running into the early 90s, I was picking up some Spectacular. I usually kind of gravitated more towards Amazing at that time, but you're right, the whole Superman concept that they end up adopting after this is what made me go, oh man, I don't know if I can continue to get these, because I'm going to have to get all these titles at the same time in order to stay in touch. If I get one outside of the storyline, I might not know where I'm at. I kind of parted ways with Spider-Man for a little while because of that. But I do have a lot of memories of Spectacular Spider-Man around Inferno. I remember we had a lot of situations where Tombstone was involved. Maybe that was Web of. I can't remember. But I feel like Spectacular might have had some Tombstone in it. But anyway, Tombstone and Robbie Robertson, these guys these two guys have this history. So I'm curious as to what led this to you being like, let's focus on this. Anything that kind of made you go, we got to do this issue tonight?
Well, this one just always stuck out as a really memorable issue from when I was a kid, because I never really read a comic that was deliberately trying to be funny. Eugene DeMatteis, the writer who also worked on the Wahaha Justice League, titles. I'd never read those, so he was kind of coming from that. That's kind of the tone of those issues. Although I've read some of the latter stuff that came out in the 2000s, but never the 80s and early 90s version of that book. But I feel like he was kind of adopting that style for this single issue.
Yeah.
It always stuck out to me. I long had the idea of putting this in a poll, one of our Unspoken Issues Facebook polls against another comedic book. I can't think of any other comics from the 90s that feel like this. I knew we were coming up on needing an episode to go up, so instead of putting up a poll, I was like, let's just do this one.
That's all right.
Let's just talk about it.
Heck yeah. So, Spectacular Spider-Man number 185. This was on sale January 2nd, 1992. Our writer is J.M. DeMatteis. We already talked about him quite a few times on previous episodes. Art by Sal Buscema, lettered by Rick L. Parker, and colored by Bob Sharon. Now, I want to go ahead. I did a little bit of research today. Kind of want to break down Sal Buscema. I don't think we talk about him on here very often.
It doesn't seem like.
No, I know reason is because I don't think we've done any Spectacular Spider-Man issues. Basically.
Right, and that's all he did. It seemed like the whole 90s and forever.
Right. So, just to give you a snapshot of Sal Buscema's career and what's going on with him here in the 90s, his first published credits come from the late 1960s, where he begins primarily as an inker. His earliest works include issues of Rawhide Kid and Silver Surfer, but by the turn of the decade, he had already started penciling, and Marvel quickly realizes they have a powerhouse on their hands. And here come the 1970s, and Sal becomes Marvel's go-to penciler. According to what I pulled off of Mike's Amazing World of Comics, this 1970s is his busiest decade by far. 370 issues get credited to him.
Wow.
Yeah. His single biggest year is 1976, where he does almost 57 issues, almost an issue a week for that entire year. He becomes synonymous with Incredible Hulk and the Defenders. If you picked up any Marvel books in the mid to late 1970s, there's probably a good chance you're going to see Sal Buscema art on there. Now, here's something pretty interesting. Out of everything, he has 933 credited works on Mike's Amazing World of Comics here. He's penciler about half of that, 516 issues. 252 of them list him as inker, and 165 simply as artist, which is most likely when he does the pencils and inks. So he's pretty versatile. In the 80s, he starts to slow a little bit as far as pace goes. He's still pumping out issues. He gets to 239 issues that year. Here he's coming into Spectacular Spider-Man. He's doing some work on Captain America. He's got some runs on the Hulk at that time. By the 90s, he starts to shift more towards the Spider titles. He's even got a little bit of work at DC. He does some stuff for some Batman anthologies. Marvel remains his home, where he starts, not only is it just Spectacular Spider-Man, I think Spider-Girl starts coming into, he starts doing some stuff on that. In the 2000s, he adds another 100-plus credits. So he's keeping his name out there for sure. From 1991 through 96, he pencils more than 100 consecutive issues of Spectacular Spider-Man.
Anytime I think of Spider-Man, there were different runs of different artists, a lot of different artists on those books, but like Amazing, like when I think Mark Bagley, I think Amazing Spider-Man.
Right.
When I think Emma, I think Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
When I think Alex Savuk or Savu, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was the Web of Spider-Man guy for a long time.
Yep.
And those guys are kind of synonymous with those early to mid 90s Spider titles to me. We don't want to move past Sal without mentioning his older brother.
Oh, John, right?
Yeah, John Buscema, who I, for a long time, just assumed that Sal Buscema was his son for some reason. As a kid, John Buscema wasn't really doing as much anymore, so I assumed he was older and Sal Buscema was probably his son or something. I believe Sal is the younger brother of John Buscema.
Yeah. John, what... obviously I've heard of his name, but I cannot think of some of the stuff that he
was a big Amazing Spider-Man artist, I think in the 60s and 70s.
Okay. All right.
And he did a lot of Conan as well.
I remember hearing his name sometime associated with Conan. So, okay. Makes sense. Well, okay. So here's a bit of a coincidence I found as I was comparing data from Mike's Amazing World of Comics. So Sal Buscema and J.M. DeMatteis, they form this kind of partnership as they go through Spectacular Spider-Man, right? One of their first collaborations, if not the first, was Marvel Team Up number 130. All right. This is a story that pairs Spider-Man with Scarlet Witch. But the twist is the very next issue, 131, DeMatteis is still writing. Sal goes off to do probably something else. He's not credited on the next issue. But that's the issue. 131 is the issue that introduces two characters that we're going to talk about today, and that's the White Rabbit and Eugene Patilio, a.k.a. Frogman. Sal ends up coming back to Marvel Team Up for 132 and 133, so he disappears when these two characters make their debut. Now we get the opportunity to watch these two work together. Real interesting bit of timing there. When we look at the characters of this book, we know who Spider-Man is. What I wanted to do is get an idea of what was leading up to what we're getting in this book, and you kind of already mentioned, and that is a storyline that ran from 178 to 184. I think 184 just was called After the Aftermath. So I think it was a 6-part story and then an aftermath issue for a story called The Child Within. That's what you were talking about here. The story follows Spider-Man as he becomes entangled in the psychological unraveling of Edward Whalen that was transformed into vermin, and his best friend, Harry Osborn, whose fragile sanity pushed him once more into the role of Green Goblin. At Ravencroft, Dr. Ashley Kafka struggled to reach Vermin's human side, uncovering a history of abuse and trauma. While she tried to heal him, Vermin lashed out violently, dragging Spider-Man into a brutal confrontation that forced Peter to confront his own guilt, fear, and memories of being buried alive by Kraven. So yeah, we're kind of pulling back with Kraven's last hunt there. Meanwhile, Harry Osborn's hallucinations of his father drove him to don the Green Goblin's mask again. What followed was a nightmarish clash of illusions, guilt, and rage, Spider-Man facing both Vermin's fractured psyche and Harry's deadly obsession. By the end, Vermin was returned to custody with the faintest glimmer of hope for recovery, but Harry, he escapes into the night, fully embracing his goblin persona once again. Peter Parker walked away battered, emotionally raw, seems like that happens a lot of times for old Peter here, and haunted by the uncertainty of what his best friend might do next. That's the world Spider-Man is living in as we open up issue 185, stepping out of the shadows of one of his most harrowing sagas, only to tumble into one of the most absurdly comedic team-ups. So we all know who Spider-Man is. That's where he's at right now as we get into issue 185. Then we have Leapfrog. So this is the first character, villain slash, well, let's try reformed villain.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is Vincent, and I believe it's Patilio, Patilio, or Patillo. I don't know. It's one of those. I think it's Italian, I believe. There's a lot of pasta mentions here at the dinner, so I'm going to go with it's Italian. Yeah. All right. So Leapfrog.
We could probably consult the She-Hulk episode that Leapfrog is in and find out.
Oh, true. Very true. So Leapfrog, let's head back to the 1960s for who Leapfrog is. Like I said, Vincent Patilio, Frogman's father, the man who first bounced into Marvel's pages way back in Daredevil number 25 from February of 1967. Brainchild of two legends, Stan Lee and artist Gene Colan. Vincent wasn't born with superpowers. Instead, he engineered them. Frustrated by his lack of success as a novelty item inventor, he rigged a frog-themed suit with electrical leaping coils in the boots, capable of launching him up to 6 stories high or propelling him forward up to 100 feet. The suit even packed a power source on his back, internal padding to cushion his landings, and a computer-guided leaping system for accuracy. In his debut story, Vincent roamed the city, robbing jewelry stores and evading Daredevil's grasp by ricocheting off walls with panache. His crime spree didn't last long. After being defeated, he tried to dodge justice by leaping out of the courtroom. Vincent eventually enters the supervillain fold as part of Electro's emissaries of evil, but time and again, Daredevil and other heroes like Iron Man defeat him. After retiring from villainy and serving his time, Vincent reformed. That's where things get personal. From that redemption arc sprung a comedic, heartwarming twist. His teenage son, Eugene, would don the very same suit, but this time as a hero. And that's the birth of Frogman, the fabulous leaping legacy of the Patilios. Let's get into Eugene here. So Eugene Patilio, Frogman. Before he shows up in a spectacular Spider-Man 185, Eugene makes a much quieter but no less memorable entrance into the Marvel Universe. His first appearance comes in Marvel Team-Up number 121, published in June of 1982, in a story called Look Before You Leap. In that issue, we're introduced to 15-year-old Eugene, son of the washed-up inventor turned villain Leapfrog. We see Eugene discover his father's abandoned frog suit in their closet and chose to make it his own, a way to help his dad move past the shame of his criminal past by turning it into something heroic. Clumsily yet heroically, he leaps into the fray to battle the Speed Demon, not the Amalgam character, inadvertently saving the day during a team-up between Spider-Man and the Human Torch. And after the dust settles, Eugene rebrands himself as the fabulous Frogman, name he declares has more pizzazz than Leapfrog. All right, so there you go. There's our heroes. Let's talk about our villains. Two iconic, almost a terrible two of iconic villains. We have the enigmatic Lorena Dodson, better known as the White Rabbit, leaps into the Marvel Universe in Marvel Team-Up number 131, published in July of 1983. Crafted by J.M. DeMatteis, Kerry Gamil, and Mike Esposito, she's introduced not as a brooding villain with world domination plans, but a bored, wealthy widow turned theatrical criminal with a love for Alice in Wonderland and a flair for chaos. Armed with a ridiculous yet surprisingly functional arsenal, rocket boots, razor-tipped carrot-firing umbrellas, genetically altered killer rabbits, and even giant robotic bunnies, White Rabbit is bizarrely dangerous. She launches her crime spree by robbing fast food joints like Quickie Burger, where she first crosses paths with Frogman. Her first outing ends in a humiliation when Frogman and Spider-Man foil her robbery attempt, and she's later struck down at a book fair with equal theatrics. Our second villain here is Walrus. Our spotlight hops over to the delightfully ridiculous corner of Marvel's Rogues Gallery, Hubert Carpenter, better known as the Walrus. He makes his debut in the Defenders number 131, cover dated May of 1984, written by, you guessed it, J.M. DeMatteis and Peter that's right, and Peter Gillis, with art by Alan Kupperberg. Hubert was a humble New York City cab driver until his eccentric uncle, Humbert, used experimental Omicron ray technology to mutate him with the proportionate speed, strength, and agility of a walrus.
Almost laughable.
Right. Naturally, Hubert is far from the sharpest character in the comic book sea. Just think like a mutant with a layer of blubber who can hold his breath for a really long time, survive freezing waters, and cause chaotic property damage with about zero subtlety. It all kicks off. This is a synopsis for the Defenders issue. It kicks off at a college lecture featuring Beast of the Defenders as he delivers his talk at Brooklyn University. Hubert goes on a rampage, smashing through walls and confronting Beast, Iceman, and Angel on his uncle's urgent command to upstage them and land a spot on Johnny Carson's show. But even that criminal showdown pales in spectacle compared to what happens next. Frogman, the awkward teenage hero, is there trying to audition for the Defenders. When traditional crime fighting fails, Frogman inadvertently takes down the Walrus when his Omicron-powered chaos abruptly wears off. I told you I did some research. There you go. That is a nice little idea of who these characters are. Had you run into any of these characters before we get into this issue?
I had never read anything with these characters back then before this. I have seen White Rabbit has returned even in some of the more recent Spider-Man stuff.
Has she? Okay. Yeah.
Mostly is like just a low level or maybe a mid-level criminal, like mob character.
Well,
in the underworld of New York and stuff.
Kind of tough to take her seriously to be a big boss, but
yeah.
That's that.
When for some reason I was gonna talk about how this Frogman of the character evolved and maybe even died later. But I was confusing him with Spider Kid. If you've ever seen, there's a late 80s Spider-Man issue with a kid in a bad Spider-Man costume with almost Dr. Octopus-like arms. He was called Spider Kid. He was just a kid who invented these metal arms and wanted to be Spider-Man's sidekick. I think that was supposed to be kind of comedic as well.
Uh-huh.
And then later, like in, I think, maybe the early 2000s, that character came back as a really buff, like, I forget, he had a different name at that point, but I think he died at some point.
Oh, okay.
The point is, I thought this character was that character for a while, and then I realized when I was looking up stuff for this episode that that's not the same character.
I assume Eugene is still alive.
He does show up again, and he's part of, hey, I'm a Kentucky boy. He's part of the Kentucky Avengers Initiative team in that of Marvel Comics.
Okay. I don't own this issue, but I could tell you that this is the first time I read it. The past couple days was the first time I'd read the issue. White Rabbit, though, I do have the White Rabbit issue where her first appearance is. I ended up getting it in a box in an auction. All right, let's get into the issue here. So, a brief overview of what happens in Spectacular Spider-Man number 185. You know, we have an issue here that's, again, slapstick comedy. We got heartfelt family drama. It begins with Spider-Man running into Eugene Patilio, the overeager fabulous frogman, whose attempts at heroism nearly get him killed. Despite Eugene's bumbling, Spidey shows a reluctant fondness for him, even agreeing to a family dinner with the Patilios. Those dinner scenes play out like a sitcom in this issue, with Eugene's aunt fussing over everything, his father, Vincent, trying to rein in his son's reckless dreams, and Peter caught between laughter and quiet admiration for their warmth. It's a reminder that Spider-Man's world isn't always brooding alleyways and deadly rogues. Sometimes it's cake, family albums, and awkward small talk. Meanwhile, a different kind of family is being built beneath the city, as the eccentric White Rabbit recruits the dim-witted Walrus for her grand new villainous team, the Terrible Two. Their antics, built more on spectacle than strategy, spill into the streets of Brooklyn, setting up a showdown that is as absurd as it is destructive. Spider-Man swings into action, his quips getting sharper with razor-tipped carrots White Rabbit fires at him. The Walrus's self-declared powers, having the proportionate speed and strength of a walrus, prove laughable to Spider-Man, showing just how ridiculous these foes are compared to Spidey's usual rogues gallery. The real surprise comes when Frogman leaps into the fray and, against all odds, actually helps. This seems a bit off from the usual clumsiness of Eugene, and we soon learn this is actually his father, Vincent, secretly suiting up once again as the Leapfrog in an upgraded costume. Eugene, dressed also as Frogman, barrels in. What begins as chaos suddenly gains an emotional core. Father and son, both in frog suits, sharing a moment of pride and reconciliation in the middle of a brawl. In the end, the fight closes with a mix of hilarity and triumph. Spidey effortlessly flicking Walrus into unconsciousness while the cameras gush over the terrible trio of heroes. Eugene and Vincent soak in the applause, and even Spider-Man allows himself a grin, indulging in the rare chance to enjoy victory without tragedy. All right. So we have Spider-Man, who is clearly not in a good mood.
He's not happy to see Eugene.
Not at all. He is not happy at all to see. I think it's a matter of, and this was my first note for the book, we just went through, like I said, I think it was 7 issues of some really harrowing stuff. And now he's just kind of trying to collect himself, and here comes, I mean, it's so funny. He opens up the conversation saying hi like 5 times. And Spider-Man's like, oh my gosh, I do not have time for this. But what a way to open things up. Anyway, I want to give you the floor here, man. What are your notes here on this issue?
One thing I wanted to point out that I should have maybe mentioned when we were talking about Buscema earlier, I do like his art quite a bit. I wasn't a huge fan as a kid, but I appreciate it more now. Now, I haven't read any of these Spectacular Spider-Man issues in years, so I don't know if it's just this issue, but I get a lot, in the faces especially, a lot of Chuck Jones type expression, the animator who did a lot of the Looney Tunes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe that's because he's got the bunny, the White Rabbit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a comedic issue. That might have something to do with it. That's something that really stuck out to me, is a lot of the expressions. And also that could have something to do with, like, Kevin Maguire, who did those JLA issue. He's really known for like facial expressions and getting really emotive stuff out of facial expressions. So maybe they were trying to evoke that type of feel because it's kind of similar in tone to what they were doing with those.
I want to jump off what you're talking about. I didn't really want to dismiss Sal Buscema.
Yeah.
Because his artwork is really solid. And when you are, putting in over 100 issues of a title, you deserve a lot of credit. They had enough faith in you to handle this character. Spider-Man's a big character, folks. And granted, it's Spectacular Spider-Man, but that was kind of where I was at. I was gauging the artwork. Let me give you the Spider titles that were on the shelf, January of 1992. Web of, so let me I think I can click on this real quick. Web of had Alex Saviuk, just like you were talking about, and Howard Mackey was writing on that one. Amazing was Chris Moranin, which is a penciler.
That must have been a fill-in issue.
Let's look and see. That was Amazing Spider-Man 360. Oh, crap. 361 hits February of 92, which is our first Carnage, isn't it? Mark Bagley's taken over there. He's probably the previous artist. No, Chris. There he is. Okay. So, 358. That was Round Robin, the end of Round Robin. So, we got Mark Bagley. We got Alex Saviuk. And then let's take a look at adjective list real quick. Larson, Revenge of the Sinister Six, Part 3.
Nice.
So,
we got to do that.
Yeah, dude. The reason I'm pointing this out is Sal Buscema, the workhorse that he is, he's a veteran at this point. He's not flashy. He is definitely like the workhorse. Okay, I'm going to get this stuff done. Aside from our first page, you do not have like these splash pages that's happening. And we're getting ready to get into the image boom. But what happens before the image boom is these artists that are at Marvel, Liefeld, McFarlane, Larson, Jim Lee are sitting here at Marvel. I am gravitating towards the art. I'm going towards the flashy guys.
Let me put your mind at ease, Jesse. Sal Buscema's not going to listen to this.
Yeah. You're probably right.
I get it. Pardon the pun or whatever, but it's not, the art is not spectacular. It's not the flashy, super intense stuff that McFarlane was doing or super energetic stuff. It's just really competent storytelling, and it looks good. And you know what's going on.
Serves the purpose.
The panel, it's very old school, and he's a guy that came up in the 60s and 70s doing comics. At the similar feel to those as far as the panel grids and everything.
Yeah. All right, continue.
White Rabbit, she's got kind of a sexy, almost like a sexy Playboy type outfit, like the Playboy bunnies. So she's got rabbit ears and like a swimsuit type thing with a jacket over it and a bow tie. Hey, these are supervillains. You got to stick to your gimmick. So she's got the umbrella with explosive carrots, razor carrots, I think, as well. Good on her.
Yeah.
She makes work of that umbrella, but nevertheless.
On the subject of weapons, that was my second note here. Like, I'm glad Walrus could hold up to these razor carrots because she brings him down into the hideout after inviting him there and then just starts unloading on him. He has no idea. She's like, let's see if you've passed my first test. Thank goodness he did. Because he was going to...
Yeah. Could have killed him right there.
There's like bodies laid behind him, like a bunch of bodies of other supervillains that came down there.
And I really like Walrus and the White Rabbit, who at one point he asked why it's just the two of them, basically, and why didn't you call these people? And he basically, even as dumb as he seems to be, he figures out, well, they hung up on you, right? I'm the only guy you could actually recruit to team up with you. But he's a businessman. He just wants to get paid. He doesn't really understand. White Rabbit is more doing it for the thrill. She doesn't really care about robbing a bank or anything. I guess her main goal is to draw. Is she trying to draw a leapfrog out?
She's trying to draw Frogman out because the last time she tried to do anything, he ends up somehow messing it up. So she's so mad. She wants revenge, and the only way, in her bright mind is to just start causing a bunch of chaos and start yelling for him, I guess.
Yeah, I'm at the page where she's talking to him about creating mayhem and havoc, and his response is, wouldn't it be better if we just robbed a bank and went to Acapulco?
That's all he wants to do.
He's having none of that. She says, get busy with the mayhem. There's a panel of him just standing there, a pregnant pause almost. He looks up at a street light or some kind of pole, and he's like, okay, and rips it out of the ground and throws it up to a window. I do like, there's the funny little dinner scene where before dinner, Spider-Man is awkwardly sitting on the couch with his hands folded, talking to Eugene and his dad, and just kind of talking about work.
There's definitely some awkwardness there. Here we have Vincent, who was a criminal before, and now all of a sudden he's bringing a superhero into his house. It's good to see that he's reformed. He's trying to do right. He's definitely trying to raise his son right. I just thought it was very strange for Spider-Man to just like, you know what? I am going to go sit down at dinner. I guess he can only go in his full costume.
He can't give up his secret identity.
Yeah. So he's got to pull his mask halfway up his face in order to eat, which is hilarious. I thought it was cool that Vincent sat down there with him, was trying to make small talk, but I'm sure there had to have been even more awkwardness if it was live action or something like that to where we could have saw it. It's just, these... You got a former supervillain and a superhero sitting there at the, hey, let's sit down and eat dinner. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, Eugene, there's room on that couch. You don't have to be snuggling up next to Spidey. He's right up on him.
Oh, that's okay. So we get the bwahaha nod.
That's right. There are a few references to that JLA era, and that's I think the first one, the bwahaha, and Spidey even acknowledges it to just put a stamp on the reference.
That's great.
The dad asks, how's work going? And Spidey's response is, work's been interesting. A guy named Vermin's been trying to eat me. The Green Goblin came back and almost destroyed my mind with a psychedelic pumpkin. So business as usual, pretty much. There's another of the JLA references, the TV, when they're in the living room having dessert, I guess. The anchor, all the dwarfs' fault, Gardner was heard to say before, and it kind of trails off.
Oh,
that's Guy Gardner, and I believe they had some kind of liaison or something that was a little person. I haven't read those, so I don't really know.
That's funny. I was trying to pull stuff out of here because I'm sure that they were making references left and right, and I totally missed that. That's great.
But yeah, that's kind of all I got. I love the Walrus getting laughed at and taking it out on Spidey briefly, getting a little bit of a leg up on him. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. There is another, at the very end, there's another mention of the JLA because DeMatteis leaves, kind of dedicates the issue to Keith Giffen and Andy, who I'm not sure who Andy is. Might have been an editor even.
It could have been. I want you to do me a favor and find the best panel that has the walrus on it. The one where you could just completely see the walrus. Find the best picture, and then I want you to describe to our listeners this epic costume that Walrus is wearing.
It's a pretty simple costume, really. The Walrus, I don't know the character's name, but he's a pretty heavy-set individual. So he's got a skin-tight brown bodysuit, basically. Interestingly, he's got the boots and the gloves in the form of flippers, which makes it even harder. Like, he can't dial a telephone. But that's pretty much it for the costume. He's got a mask. It looks almost like a biker helmet, but it's kind of bulbous.
Right.
And it's got the nose and whiskers and a couple of tusks hanging out of the mask. And then you see his mouth and chin area exposed, as a lot of superheroes and villains have.
You missed the centerpiece of this thing.
Well, that's true. He's got the big W with the rainbow pattern on his chest.
What? I could get the flippers. We got gray and brown. We got tusks. We got a face, whiskers, a nose that looks like a walrus. But he's like, to really pull this all together, I have to have a rainbow W on my chest just to land this. And I think it's the goofiest thing. And it's perfect walrus material. That's walrus all around. A lot of the stuff you already hit on that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned in my notes, we don't really have, aside from our beginning page, it's not really an action splash page either. We got an opener, which is a full page of just Spidey leaning up against the wall, and here comes Eugene. It is pretty neat to see, two frogmen showing up. They're a neat little mystery. And of course, a few panels later, Vincent kind of pulls his mask off because Spidey's like, how is Frogman here and he's not falling over or something?
Yeah. Why is he so competent all of a sudden?
Yeah, all of a sudden he knows what he's doing. So that was pretty fun. This is definitely a fun issue. We have to talk about the December coolometer.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. I'm going to give you, this is December of 91. The book was on the shelves January of 92. Clearly, it's December of 1991. Let me find my breakdown here of what this coolometer kind of represents and what was going on at the time. Some of these things, I was like, what? Who? What? I don't know what this is. But I got my answers.
Why is Dr. Seuss so cool at this point?
That's interesting. The only thing I can think of is possibly How the Grinch Stole Christmas, because it's in December.
Yeah, they show that every year, but I mean,
they're going to give some crap to another thing on this list because of how often it's done, but they don't do that here. Dr. Seuss all of a sudden is very cool. Now, maybe there was some kind of news story that was going on. I'm sure at this time in 91, I think Dr. Seuss is still alive. Gosh, when did he? September 24th, 91. So it was this year he passes away. That might be why he's being remembered.
It would have been just before this book ran, I think, or just a few months before.
Okay. All right. Well, Guns N' Roses. Do you know what's happening with Guns N' Roses in 1991?
I assume they just had an album come out.
Do you remember a movie called Terminator 2?
Ah.
Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 come out in 91, and You Could Be Mine for Terminator. Terminator 2 was probably being played a lot on MTV. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, good stuff. Power Pack Holiday Special. Now we're moving from good to not so great. Power Pack Holiday Special seems like it's more along the lines of like, hey, let's plug some of our things. Mystery Science Theater 3000, though, wow.
That was probably brand new.
Yeah, I think Mystery Science Theater 3000 started in the late 80s. It's definitely not got a lot of years under it. I think it's got maybe 3 or 4. It is just moving to Comedy Central. A lot more people are starting to kind of be aware of what Mystery Science Theater 3000 is. But yeah, man, that ain't the end of that thing being on a coolometer, that's for sure. Spy Magazine, you ever hear of that?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I remember seeing it, but I never picked it up, never looked at it. And I guess it was like a satire magazine. I don't know if it's on the level of Mad, but they would really take it to celebrities. So that was Spy Magazine. Did you ever watch Northern Exposure?
No, I didn't. I think I would like it. I remember wanting to watch it when I was a kid, but I never did. 3 shows that I used to always get confused were Twin Peaks, Northern Exposure, and Picket Fences.
Picket Fences.
I did watch Picket Fences.
All right. Well, the next thing is utter lack of pretentiousness. That's just silly. Okay. All right. Kim the Alley Cat Alley, as we're making our way to the middle here, I believe.
No idea who that is.
A tennis player. All right. A brief bit of notoriety in the early 90s. I don't know what about, but okay. Characters with no first names, such as
Cher or
Madonna. Why is this in the middle and so far down? The Olympic basketball team in 91 heading into 92?
Yeah, by this time they would have already picked the first dream team.
Yeah.
So maybe this person doesn't like basketball.
That's ridiculous, dude. I can remember the dream team hype. Couldn't you get like, I remember McDonald's running a promotion for
those cups.
Yep, I remember the cups. All right, pregnant sitcom actresses. And the only thing that ChatGPT kind of pointed out was Murphy Brown. I just watched something within the last year about how that was kind of a taboo thing. A single woman being pregnant on TV, and she's going to, remain single, I think is what the big deal was. But yeah, I remember hearing about that. Interesting, a bit of opinion there. Okay. And then we have the Barbie twins, which I barely remember. Do you remember the Barbie twins at all?
I don't know who they were or what it means.
Make sure to go into safe mode and look up Barbie twins.
Gotcha.
Then you have Cable, which, okay.
I guess this, Rob's on his way out.
Yeah,
so.
This is a shot across the bow, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness. Then as we get near the bottom here, nostalgia for the 1980s. I don't know about that.
Well, it would bubble back up again about 8 years later. And
Yeah.
would stay active up until today.
Right. I know you're a film guy. Barton Fink.
This is a really highly regarded Coen Brothers movie. I've seen it once and I didn't really like it, but I'm in the minority. Some people think it's their best movie. I don't know.
Really?
I thought it was boring.
Coen Brothers has got some good movies, though. Yeah. Stuff that I've liked.
It's about John Turturro being like a screenwriter in the maybe 40s or 50s. And I think it's kind of about him losing control over his work. It's been a long time since I watched it. I don't really remember the specifics, but
I've never seen it. Holographic video games. Do you remember these at the arcade at all?
I don't guess so.
All right. I'll try and describe what they look like because it definitely wasn't a stand-up cabinet. These things were like, they look like tabletop, kind of like what you maybe get with a Pac-Man sit down, where you'd sit down and play Pac-Man and the screen would be facing straight up to the ceiling. I don't know if you've ever seen. I'm sure you probably had to have seen at least one of those games before, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine that, except it has this huge dome coming up. If I remember correctly, it comes up over half of the tabletop. Inside of the dome, it appears to be like holograms. The best way to describe it, and it's been a long time, I remember seeing one at a truck stop. And I mean, this thing was massive. This was in the early 90s, if I remember correctly. The best way to describe it is like, okay, Dragon's Lair. If you've ever played Dragon's Lair, where you only, it looks animated, and really the only thing you're doing is just pushing up, down, left, or right, and that kind of picks what the next action's supposed to be. That is almost exactly what that reminds me of. I thought it was cool as shit, man. I thought it was awesome. I mean, I was like, holy crap, it's holograms. And you never saw another one of them. I imagine it's because when it comes to arcade games, space is at a premium. If it's taking up a big bunch of space. But anyway, holographic video games, I guess it's not as cool here as we get into 92. Living off the fat of the land, okay, nice opinion. I guess he doesn't want people to be lazy, fine. Now, we're getting to the bottom. And
we could pretty much safely say the rest of these are uncool.
Yeah,
in their opinion.
according to them, this is uncool. And the first one that they have listed here, Lobo.
Oh yeah!
Wow. All right then. I feel like he is in his heyday right around here, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so too. I'm curious who had the final say.
Right. Then we have Marla Maples, which is a name I haven't heard in forever. Right. But
that's one of ex-wives, isn't it?
Yep, Trump's ex-wife. Then we have iambic pentameter.
All right.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I assume this is a Shakespeare joke, I guess. I don't know. All right. Herman's Head. Did you ever watch Herman's Head?
I know what it is.
Okay.
I don't have opinion on it because I've never watched it.
As we make our way down, here we go. The last two, parodies of A Christmas Carol.
I mean, Scrooged was a few years before this.
I think that was 87 or 88, right?
Every sitcom has done a parody of A Christmas Carol in the 80s and 90s.
All right. And then to round things out, people who don't like coolometers. Well,
I do remember the last coolometer. If I remember right, the last coolometer, the very last thing on the meter was coolometers.
Perfect.
So that was a good gag that they would do at some point in the 90s whenever they finished it up.
Oh, man. Well, that was fun. That was a nice little snapshot. I love these snapshots of 1990s pop culture. Yeah. So let's pick a panel, brother. You got one?
I'm going to go with page 17. It's the panel I mentioned earlier, the third panel of the Walrus just absently staring at the pole, considering what he should do.
No dialogue whatsoever. And he's just like, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. What page am I on here? I think it's later. It is page 24. And this is just after Vincent shows up and punches the crap out of the walrus.
A good one.
He mid-leap, swung and hit the old walrus, and he's just flying backwards. So there you go. That's my panel pick for this book.
I do want to point out, we didn't really go into this, I don't think. When the walrus tells Spider-Man he has a proportionate speed, strength, and agility of a walrus.
Oh, my gosh.
It results in Spider-Man laughing heartily at him, which angers the walrus. He catches Spider-Man unawares
He does.
with a big right hand. Later, we see Spidey getting his revenge on the Walrus, who's charging at the Frog Brothers, and takes him out with a flick of his index finger.
Right into his face.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we have just robbed a bank?
Yeah.
Right down, face plant.
I've always remembered that, Spider-Man taking him out with the flick of his finger.
Yeah. Spider-Man, tough dude. Pretty powerful when he wants to be. He just knocks him out by flicking him. I don't know how many appearances the Walrus makes after this, but, I mean, there's no way that he comes back in some serious manner. But who knows? Let's just take a look. Before I even go into this, I want you to take a guess. You can just round it to the nearest 10. How many Hubert Carpenter appearances do you think are listed on MarvelFandom.com?
10.
Ooh, that's a very good guess. 13, his last appearance, according to this. Wow, he made it pretty deep here. Miles Morales' Spider-Man Volume 2, number 18, which came out in 2020, last year.
Huh.
May of last year. Let's see if they just say cameo or mentioned. No, they have a bunch of mentions, but there is not a mention by Walrus. He must show up. Interesting. There it is. Chris Armstrong.
We did it.
We did it. Spectacular Spider-Man 185 in the books. Cannot wait for this to air. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and get into plugs, brother. What do you got going on?
Well, if I can secure a recording
program,
I've got another podcast to do with my buddy AJ, movie podcast called Small Screeners, where we look at direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. Got one on Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning, I think, is the subtitle. Coming up, it should be out by the time this releases. Also, we have another movie podcast we do called Because Movies, where we look at any kind of movie projects we want to.
Yeah, love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hop to my calendar here and see what we got going on. I know right now, myself and Mark Radlich, in the midst of the Source Material Comics podcast, which you can hear right here, we are in the throes of like 30 issues of Darth Vader comics, including Vader Down, happening here in the next 3 weeks. I think the first episode of that just aired on the 18th of August. So if you like Darth Vader, we're going to be talking a lot about him here the next few episodes of the Source Material Comics podcast. As for the Unspoken Issues podcast, I actually did a solo shot because I was in need of an episode. I recorded a solo shot of a really interesting comic that I didn't know existed. And there is an Ozzy Osbourne comic out there. We just lost Ozzy last month. And I think it was on the 22nd of July when he passed away. So in celebration of everything that he's done, a month later after he's passed here, I'm airing Ozzy Osbourne #1 from Rocket Comics. Really, really, really just kind of eerie, surreal, interesting story being told all at once. And then, of course, we have the Snap Material podcast where me and Evan Bevins get together, talk about Marvel Snap, that mobile game where you get to play Marvel Snap. We have a good time talking about it. I think our next episode will probably be airing here right around when this episode drops, because usually we get together first week at some point of the next month. So, with that being said, we are getting out of here. Actually, we are hopping out of here. That over there, that over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.